In this lesson, you're going to see how to solve systems of equation by elimination. And in this part, we're going to just cover addition and subtraction. Up to this point, we've been solving systems of equation by either graphing them and finding if and where the lines intersect, or we've been using substitution. And sometimes substitution can be a little confusing for students. So let's look at addition and subtraction. If I have, let's say, two very simple equations, n plus d equals 24, and n minus d equals 12, I see right here that I have positive d and negative d. Remember that d is the same variable in both equations. So if I were to simply add the two equations together, and when I do this, I'm going to add vertically, adding like terms, I get 2n, for n plus n. The positive d and the negative d go to 0. And I get, on the right side of the equal sign, 36. So when I divide both sides by 2, I get n equals 18. Very simple way of finding for one variable. Now if I take that value for n at 18 and plug it back into either equation, so if I take n at 18 and I plug it back into here, I get 18 plus d equals 24. And by subtracting 18 from both sides, I get d equals 6. And that makes sense, that 18 plus 6 would be 24. So let's see how we do this for systems of linear equations, or equations that represent lines. Let's look at this example. 3x minus 5y equals negative 16, and 2x plus 5y equals 31. Now in this example, what do we see? We see we have negative 5y, and we have positive 5y. So what we're going to do is, when we're trying to solve by elimination, we're going to see if we have two terms that are the same. Now obviously one is positive and one is negative, but they're essentially the same term. So now we can see if we add those two together. If we add negative 5y and positive 5y, they will go to 0. So our strategy, because those two are additive inverses, in other words, one's negative and one's positive, our strategy here is to add. So we're going to add one equation to the next. And when we add 3x plus 2x, we get 5x on the left-hand side. 5y and negative 5y cancel out and go to 0. And on the right-hand side, we get negative 16 plus 31. Remember, the signs are different, so we're going to subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So we get 15. 31 minus 16 is 15. And then our next step is to divide both sides by 5. 5's cancel, and we get x equals 3. Now that we know what x is, let's take that value for x just like we did before when we solved by substitution, and let's go back and plug into this equation. Now remember, you're going to write the entire equation out. Put the y term back in, just because we want to solve for y, of course. So we get 3 times 3, because we solved for x at 3, minus 5y equals negative 16. So let's do all that math, and we get 9 minus 5y equals negative 16. Get rid of the 9 by subtraction. That goes to 0. We get negative 5y equals negative 15. Remember, the signs are the same, so we want to add and keep the sign. And then when we divide by negative 5 on both sides, we get y equals 3 again. So our solution, remember, should be written as an ordered pair. So our solution for this one is 3, 3. I'm sorry. Where did I mess up? Oh, I see where I messed up. I forgot to put this 1 in here. So 16 minus 9 is 25, and negative 25 minus, or divided by negative 5 is in fact 5. So our solution, I'm sorry, is 3, 5. There's a good lesson in paying attention. Alright, so let's look at a different scenario. Five x plus 2y equals 6, and 9x plus 2y equals 22. Now again, we see here that we have two of the same terms. But in this case, the signs are the same, or they're both positive. So in order to make them go away, we need to subtract. So our strategy here is to subtract. Now remember, you're subtracting the entire equation. So that's going to change the sign on everything. So we're going to go to minus 9, and this is going to be minus 2y, and this is going to be minus 22. So we're going to change the sign on everything in order to be able to eliminate our y variable. Of course, that goes to 0. 5x minus 9x is negative 4x, and 6 minus 22 is negative 16. Remember, subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. 22 minus 6 is 16, and 22 is negative, so our answer is negative. Completely solve for x. We divide by negative 4, and we get x is equal to 4. Now we're going to take that value again and bring it back and substitute it in. We could use either equation. I will just arbitrarily pick the first one. So let's do that. 5 times 4 plus 2y equals 6. 5 times 4 is 20. Plus 2y equals 6. Let's subtract 20 from both sides, and we get 2y equals negative 14. And now when we divide both sides by 2, we get y equals negative 7. So our solution here is 4, negative 7. Biggest thing to remember here when we're doing elimination by addition or subtraction is to look at your variables. In the first example, and I'll scroll that back up for you, in the first example we see we have negative 5y and positive 5y. So if we have what are called additive inverses, in other words, we have two terms that are the same, but one is positive and one is negative, we are going to add. When we have another situation, or the opposite situation, when we have two terms that have the same sign, so we have positive 2y in each equation, we are going to subtract. Remember, we're subtracting the entire equation, so that is going to change the sign. Let's look at one in which we have two negative terms. 3x minus 5y equals negative 35. And 2x minus 5y equals negative 30. So we see now we have negative 5y and negative 5y. So what do our rules say? Well, they are both the same term with the same sign, so we need to subtract. Okay? Now, we have to remember that when we subtract the second one, we're going to change the sign on everything. So let's subtract. Let's subtract 2x. When we subtract negative 5y, what happens? That changes it into plus, and then we subtract negative 30. That also changes it into plus. So now we see what we have to do. We can see now that our 5y's will cancel out, and we have 3x minus 2x gives us just x, and we have negative 35 plus 30 gives us negative 5. Remember, subtract and keep the sign with a larger value. Now that we know what x is, let's take that back and substitute it in to either equation. I just arbitrarily picked the first one, and we get 3 times negative 5 minus 5y equals negative 35. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Minus 5y equals negative 35. Let's add 15 to both sides. Get rid of the 15 first. We have negative 5y equals negative 20. Remember, signs are different, so let's subtract and keep the sign in a larger value, which is negative. So our answer is negative 20 here. And finally, let's divide by negative 5, and we get y is equal to 4. So our solution for this system of equations is negative 5, 4. I hope this helped. Please review this, go back and rewind. Feel free to pause through it if you need to review any steps more slowly.